Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Prospect Corner here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined by Dayton Reimer. We've got a special guest on an episode today, Andrew Epps, who was part of our draft coverage team, wrote a bunch of profiles as well. Andrew, how's it going?
It's going good. Thanks for having me. July 4th is over, 250 years in the book, so it's a good time to talk about all the Canadian players and stuff in the draft.
For sure. And it's been, not draft related, I guess, because there's been some draft picks being moved around, but lots of trades happened on draft day. And of course, an offer sheet that's still in the process. Leo Carlson, who was a second overall pick not that long ago as well. So yeah, lots of action early on in the offseason. We're just going to put a bow on the 2026 draft. Doing a bit of a reaction episode, talking about a bit of the classes and stuff. So Andrew, I'll start with you on this one because Dayton and I talked about this after the first round. So I know what his thoughts are, but what were some surprises from the first round this year? I mean, there's always those guys that get pushed into the first round that maybe weren't expected there. Guys getting drafted maybe higher. What were some surprises for you?
I mean, I think the obvious one is Daxon Rudolph, but you guys have probably already spoke about that. So the one that I was most surprised was Chase Reed. You just heard his name leading up to the draft, just raising further and further. I mean, he was going over Stenbar, and as he just was brought up, getting close to the draft. And I think, at draft day, you get your initial list early on, and then as results come in, you start to fine tune that. But then you enter this weird period 3 months before the drafts where it's almost like people are doing these micro adjustments. And Reed was one of those kind of micro adjustments where he just adjusted higher and higher and higher. And so I think in some of the initial draft estimates, he was closer to 7, but it was these last 3-4 months where the draft experts didn't have anything better to do but just slot him higher and higher and higher. So it was almost kind of like a self-imposed surprise that he was moved lower as we get closer to draft day. But if you look back, it's more honest to what he was at. But it was a crowd surprise more than anything. I was equally surprised. I thought he was going sooner.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was talk he could go first overall.
Yeah.
I mean, right. So, I mean, there was that discussion. I mean, obviously that debate for second overall. Should the Sharks go for defenseman or go for Stenberg? And they opted to go for Stenberg. And then Chase Reed just kept falling and falling. And there was even some thought that, they're going to end up with them anyway. When they kept getting closer to their second pick there. So, but yeah, it ended up being he did fall a little bit, but not like ridiculously far. Yeah. Where you're kind of like, oh my gosh, why did he go like 10th overall or something like that? But going to a team like the Kraken is a very good pick for them, right?
Yeah.
It was. I mean, I'm sure they're ecstatic to get him in their system. They don't really have a lot of top end defensemen in their prospect pool, so we'll see how he goes in Seattle. All right, moving to our next thing, biggest risers and fallers. Now, Dayton, we did talk a bit about this, and for the first round, but overall in the draft, now that we have the full picture, what were your biggest risers and fallers beyond the first round for you?
Daxon Rudolph was the one I would put for biggest riser. I mean, he coming up to 4 to Buffalo was pretty surprising, and I would say that was some big ones. And excuse me if I butcher the name. Tommy Belile at 31. He was pretty surprising. I mean, I saw some draft leads and looking into it, he was going at like mid 50s, and so to see him move up that fast. But the thing about him, he's a solid skater, makes good reason to move up. But I was quite surprised to see him shoot up so much, see his name called so early. We were, I'm a Stars fan, so we were a lot more invested on the 60s than other people. So we kind of had a list of, folks we wanted to see, and Tommy was one that we kind of had on the radar. Maybe he could drop into the 60s, and so to see our hopes crushed so fast, where he went in the 31. That was a bit shocking. I was like, well, there goes one of our options.
Yeah. Dayton, I mean, I know, like you say, we talked about it for the first round reaction, but Now that we have the full thing, what'd you see for the rest of the draft for biggest risers, fallers in your mind there?
Yeah, I think we kind of mentioned before that Xavier Villeneuve falling out of the first round, very surprising.
Yeah.
It is connected to his height, and I think there is concerns about kind of his all-around game, but his offensive upside is unmatched. And it's basically the same story that we've seen with the Hudsons. And it's kind of funny that we're seeing it yet again.
Yeah.
Couple of risers. Oleg Kulibakin with the 52nd pick. I liked him. I watched a few of his clips. I thought about putting him in my top 96. He was just on the edge for me. And the Lightning took him 52nd overall. I think it's a good swing. Definitely a riser. He has skill, but yeah, that one caught me off guard. And then overall goalies.
Yeah.
So many goalies started jumping up, and not the ones you'd expect. The first goalie off the board, make sure I got this right here. I think it was Tobias Trebel. Right? He was very highly ranked. No surprise. Second was Yuri Ivanov.
Yeah.
Who I don't think anybody ranked. And then third was Martin Solovech, who had a really good under 18s, but before that was on no lists whatsoever. So yeah, there was I think it was like 32 goalies selected this year.
Yeah, a full round of goalies. Like I think it was the most in a long time for that, right? And I mean, before the draft, we weren't really talking about goaltenders. A lot of the episodes were like, "Oh, let's talk about maybe 5," but ended up being so much more that went. And we'll see. I mean, like they were mentioning during the broadcast that maybe the thinking has shifted with goaltenders that you need 3, and I mean obviously not on the NHL roster, but 2 there, and then 1 really strong one in the AHL. So I mean that you can bring up at times. And look what the Carolina Hurricanes, Brandon Bussey, a waiver pickup at the beginning of the year, ends up being the guy that wins the cup, right? And that's they use 3 goaltenders. Kochetkov didn't play a lot, but you're ending up with you might need 3 guys throughout this season. And now with it even an expanded season with 84 games. You might need the 3. So yeah, maybe that's that shift. You need some goaltenders. Not saying all 32 are going to make it, because with goaltenders, it's very interesting with their developments, very long term. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if that trend kind of continues next year as well.
Yeah, another player I was thinking about while we were talking is, speaking of Dallas Stars picking up, talent way late, is Jakub Vanik. We were at the Stars development camp recently and got to see him skate, and he was another one that was just going to be a great D-man, expected to go mid-30s, and he dropped all the way to Dallas's 59 pick, and we watched him in person there at the development camp, and he looks great. I think it's also kind of a size thing of, the draft favors size a little bit, and I think he clocks in around like 5'10", 5'11", and he dropped low, but between him and last year's draft of Cam Schmidt, the Stars are going to be having these small frame, under 6 feet tall draft picks their whole roster. So another surprising pick just because he was under the 6 foot mark.
I mean, the Dallas Stars have gotten a lot of history. I mean, and Logan Stankoven in Carolina now, but they seem to be not afraid to draft those guys, and I seem to have some success with it as well. So they're one of those teams that they're very like the Tampa Bay Lightning, pick these guys later in these rounds, and they're a playoff team, but they end up with these guys that end up being pretty big parts of the team later on. Yep. So that's the power of the draft, right? I mean, yep. I always say the first round is pretty easy to pick guys. It's the scouting really gets going is later on when you can pick these gems. And, good segue into our next thing is the draft classes in general. And I'll start with you, Dayton. I mean, there might be a few of these, but what was your favorite draft class of the 32 this year?
Yeah, I did have a few favorites. I think, though, the one that tops it is Toronto, believe it or not. As a Senators writer, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, but I thought they were using their picks incredibly well. McKenna first overall, kind of a no-brainer. if you're the Leafs, I guess I would have taken someone else, but I'm not the Leafs. It's their later picks that I really liked. Bilecki is really good. Zach Olsen was really good. Getting Cooper Williams as low as they did, that's a high value pick. Ethan McKenzie was still when they were making a selection. They got a really good overage defenseman there. Mans Gudmundsson, Patrick Plumage. Like, they were grabbing a lot of guys who were very highly regarded without having to move a lot of their draft picks around. I feel like they really loaded up on talent, like all around talent, just a really solid draft class. I also really liked what Anaheim was doing. Mathis Preston, Matthias Nordmark, Nikita Klepov, Noah Kosick. I thought they got some really high end skill, but yeah, Toronto's class looks really good right now.
They had a lot of picks as well, right? So I mean, you get that volume, and I don't know if the Maple Leafs are a rebuilding team. I mean, it looks like they're going to be back in the playoffs next year if everything kind of goes. But they added a lot as a prospect pool. It wasn't really the strongest when you look at it overall until it took a big boost from this draft class, if they all pan out, that is. Andrew, what about you for draft classes? What was your favorites?
I'll say the easy one, San Jose. What a number of picks they had. Stenberg, Vierhoff. They got Ryan Lynn, and then honestly, one of my favorite late round picks was the 7'1" Alexander Karmenov. I like that San Jose live streams their prospect, scrimmage that they roll, because I was just really curious to see how all those guys play, and man, what an electric just prospect game. Karmenov was huge. Stenberg had just a great goal. Keaton Vernoff had a couple great moves, and just all that was so exciting. You just wonder in 5 years, man, San Jose with all those draft picks, you got to go somewhere, or you might need to be finding a new GM if you can't put anything together there. Also really like Nashville. We were talking about goalies. I think they picked up the number one goalie in some race, Dmitry Borochev. Correct me if I'm pronouncing any of that wrong, but it's good to see him. First big goalie pick there at 70 for them. They also had Tommy Beal, like I was mentioning, of follow, but I just think they made a lot of usage out of their draft picks and the places they had it at. They picked a really lot of good picks at when they could have drawn it. So was really like Nashville's picks there.
Yeah, I mean, not to be biased, but I like the Vancouver Canucks draft class this year. I mean, Caleb Malhotra was an expected pick at third overall, but I really like him as a player, and he's probably going to end up being, and development camp continued that and being impressive. I mean, that's the guy I think is going to be part of this new age Canucks, if you want to call it that, is that trying to change the culture. A lot of these guys, actually all of them in their draft class, all high character, all this very, that culture change, and all of them have that type of thing. The work ethic's high, that they're going to end up not end up all being NHL players, but it seems like they all have that NHL package that they could end up. Adam Novotny was one of my picks. I didn't think it was going to be available when the Canucks were picking at 24, and he ended up being there, and he was really impressive during development camp as well. So, I mean, that's 2 first-round picks. I mean, some people were kind of on with Brooks Rogowski at 33, that he might be a bit of a, taking him a guy that might top out as a third-line center. I think he has a lot more potential. He's a big guy, 6'7", and one of those centers that, the Canucks don't have any of those types of guys in their system, and drafting that. Another thing, not just the the culture and that work ethic, is the size. Like every one of them, I think their shortest guy was 6'1". So I mean, everyone else is like 6'4", around there, and I liked their class in general. Just looking at all of them together, and yeah, it's gonna be interesting to watch this draft class over the next few years. But I really liked what the Canucks did.
You gotta wonder if these amateur scouts go into their Excel spreadsheets and just filter by 6 foot, below 6 foot. They just, drop them all down. Like, okay, we can drop those guys.
You never know, right? When you're looking at
that'd be a good starting place. Okay, well, who's not 6 foot?
Yeah, I mean, not just that, and then they're big, but they can all skate. They're
Yeah.
all guys that are not going to be these. I mean, a fourth line guys. I think end up being Rogowski, even if he does end up being a third line center. I mean, you need those types of forwards in the NHL too. So I mean, we'll see. I really liked the first draft that under Ryan Johnson and the Sedins. Very impressive in my mind, and we'll see how they kind of go from there. Right. Well, the other side of it, I mean, it's very hard to say because you could take down 5 years down the road and these classes could be like, oh, maybe they weren't as underwhelming as I think. Yeah. But Andrew, looking at the draft classes, anyone that really was underwhelming, or maybe they should have done a better job, I guess, at this point.
The name that comes kind of to mind as I was thinking, just, you're looking at all the chatter on draft day. You just kept seeing St. Louis get brought up over and over. They had 4 first-round picks, and they just kept seeing, after every draft pick, somebody was saying, I can't believe they left this guy on the board. This was their need. And, what's it? Belichick's, they left him on the board twice. And I just think they picked a lot of safe picks for your first-round pick. I like to draw somebody with, like, a really high ceiling, first and second-round pick, just somebody that's really going to be, maybe your future franchise player. And they just picked a lot of safe, low ceiling guys, which, 4 first rounds, four low ceiling guys that are strengthen the team. They're guaranteed consistence. But, for a first round pick, you want to take a bigger swing, because when you get 5 years down the line, and not to use Dallas, but, with Dallas, who hasn't had a first round pick in a number of years, you look at Emil Hemming, that's their guy. And everybody says, that's who we're relying on because he was our last first round pick. That's kind of what you feel with your first round pick. So I was a little underwhelmed with them because all their picks just felt like a little bit less than, safe. They just felt a little underwhelming for what you want for those first round guys.
Especially with 3 of them, right? I mean, that's a lot of picks, a lot of high end first rounders that you hope that maybe were bigger swings. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, they're all I think they're all gonna pan out as NHL players.
Yeah.
How high? How will they be?
Yeah.
Dayton, what about you for underwhelming draft classes at this point?
I definitely agree with the St. Louis pick. They seem to take some guys who seem to be too safe, left a lot of talent on the floor. Could be really good, but I think they made some pretty big misses for what they could have anyways. I think the Oilers also had a really iffy draft. It doesn't help that you're not picking until pick 58, and then you got 5 picks total. But I don't think it's the quantity of picks that affects the draft class. It's the quality. And Toronto had a lot of picks, but they used their picks really, really well. St. Louis had a lot of picks. I don't think they used them really well. The Oilers could have used their picks really well, and I think they got a couple of decent guys. Bertz Collins is a solid first pick for them. Gastrine, I like him. He's someone who has a bit of upside. The rest of the guys, I don't know. I think they are potentially low impact guys. NHL is, probably a long shot for all of them. They could reasonably have a draft class with nothing. And I guess you could say that about everybody, but for a team that is kind of in a bit of a crunch time to not have a group of prospects coming in to, help the team in 5-6 years, I think this could be a problem for them.
I mean, it's tough for a team that, doesn't have, like you say, didn't pick till 58th overall. It's like, you don't have a first round pick. And they are in that win now mode, but you got to start thinking about where's the future beyond Connor McDavid, beyond Leon Draisaitl. They don't have anyone right now that, I mean, obviously they're very tough to replace, but we'll see how this all ends up. I mean, they're going to have to start shifting to maybe building that prospect pool again, and not hoping that you're going to go to a point where you're going to have first overall picks, second overall picks, to be ending up with those guys again. And
I'll even mirror it with another team who only had 5 picks, Dallas Stars. I thought they did really well with what they had. They didn't pick till 59. Jakub Vanacek looks like a fantastic addition. Ryan Brown, one of my favorite picks of the draft. I really loved him in the playoffs for London Knights. Jasper Kuta, Another guy who I think has some pretty decent upside. I think this is a much better class. Same number of picks.
Yeah, and
how'd you feel about Ottawa this year? Just curious.
I think it's super underrated.
Yeah, really?
Are really tearing it apart when they don't need to. There is a lot of talent, and they could have some real big, like, hidden gems in that draft class.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard a few just kind of scattered of Ottawa had a really mid draft picks, but I didn't follow it too closely, so I was curious about that. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I know Dayton had a bit of it was reserved, I guess, for the first round pick, or first round picks. I think overall they had a pretty good draft for what they had, and they ended up having 2 first round picks when they looked like they were going to have none at one point, until they were given that 32nd overall pick, and then they ended up with another one as well. So yeah, I think and they ended up with a pretty good class. We'll see how it ends up being. All right, this is a tough one because there's so many picks. But Andrew, what was your favorite pick of the entire draft? I mean, maybe you can pick 2. I'll give you 2.
I gotta say, it goes over. I mean, I've got a couple names that floated. Obviously, I'm a big Finnish scout guy, so I've got a couple Finns. But one that is actually plays in the Finnish league, but isn't a Finn, is Albert Smits. He was a guy that I felt like if you're looking for a guy that we need a NHL guy that we put out there tomorrow, he's one of those guys. What is he, 17, 18, and he went out there in the Olympics and played against Sidney Crosby, the Tkachuk brothers. I mean, he played against them as a teenager, which is crazy to see, and did pretty decently. He was a guy to me that I'm like, man, just shot up, and he was drafted pretty generously, but out of all the picks, I wanted to see him succeed. I like some prospects that you can build on and work, but I think as a fan, you see a draft and then next season you see him out there. That's why the first overall is so exciting, because you're going to see him play as soon as possible. Alberts was just one guy that just put it out there. He's got a good story too. Most of the people that come from Latvia, or like Alexander Karmenov, who come from Belarus, that they have to billet outside of their families. They're 14, 15, and they've got to move from their home country to go just be better, to follow a passion. You love to see those stories be successful, and seeing Alberts go off, top 5 was a good move, and wish him success, and just he's going to be a solid guy. So I was kind of rooting for him when I saw him play in the Olympics, and it's only grown since then.
Yeah, I liked that pick, and he went. I don't know if he went higher than everyone expected, but he did go around where he should.
Yeah.
And what was he? The second defenseman off the board?
He might. Yeah, he was second after Daxon.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if anyone expect, obviously, because Chase Reed was the expected guy to go first.
Right. Yeah.
I think he was around that range, maybe 3rd, 4th guy off the board. So
yeah. He was one of those guys that his stock rose after the Olympics. The more you guys saw him playing, I think it clicked for some people. I think I saw him really early ratings a little later, but as time went on, he projected higher and higher, and it was well deserved.
For sure. Dayton, what about you for favorite pick?
I think I got to go number 32, Jackson Cover. For me, he was always a fringe first round pick. There were times I thought of putting him 30 to 32. Other times I put him 33 to 35. He was always right in that range. The fact that Senators grabbed him right there, I think, was just perfect. He is a really hard worker. He's a great player to watch. He's really taken some huge steps in what has he been playing hockey for 5 years? Ice hockey, that is. His development path could still be crazy high for potential anyways, and making him a first round pick, especially with the journey that he's been on, very, very cool. I don't know if it could have got any better than that. Grabbing Joe Aginla, the Flames, with the first pick of the 3rd round, I thought was pretty good. Was it 3rd round or 2nd round? 3rd round. Yeah. 65th. A little high for me, but the story is really nice.
Yeah.
And then I think one player that we need to pay attention to, one of my favorite picks, pick 117, Montreal Canadiens grab Braden Klimke. Probably not a guy that you are aware of. He plays for the Saskatoon Blades. So I've talked about him here.
Yeah.
He's a little on the undersize, 6 foot, 174. I think it is very telling that the Canadians grabbed him.
Yeah.
They know they're undersized defensemen. And this guy is a brilliant skater, had 46 points in the WHL last season. He has, and was named an assistant captain when nobody was expecting him to be like even considered for a leadership position at the beginning of last year. Yeah, he could have quite a journey into the NHL. I'm very curious to see kind of where he goes. Great pickup by the Canadians. One of my favorite picks.
And I get a question, since you being an Ottawa guy, how do you feel about Jasper Kuta? That's a guy I saw him play in the dev camp, and he looked great. He went 197 to Dallas. I know he played for the 67s, but how do you feel about him?
I will be honest, haven't watched a lot of them.
Okay, yeah.
I may write about the Senators, but I am based in Saskatchewan. So if you need WHL knowledge, I got plenty of that.
I'll mention, I mentioned him already, so I won't expand it. Adam Novotny is my favorite pick. I think, like I said, I didn't even have him on my radar as being a guy that could be available at 24 because he was ranked, I think anywhere from 15th overall or even 11. I think he was up there. A lot of places were ranking him in the top 15. So I'm like, there's no way the Canucks are going to be able to get him at 24. And of course they wouldn't draft him at 3. So I didn't even have him as a target for the Canucks, and to end up him being there at 24 and the way he's looked so far in development camp, and he's going to be good. I think he's going to end up being one of those guys that really surprising for where he was drafted. We'll talk about steals soon here, but I think he's a steal at 24 for the Canucks. So he'll be a guy I'll be really watching throughout his development and see what he can do for the Canucks in the future for sure. All right, moving to steals. Again, these are all very early because we don't really know these guys if they're ending up being steals, but it's fun to do. So, Andrew, any potential steals from the first round? We're going to go first, second, and then a broad 3 to 7. We'll start with the first round.
That's a good. I've got a couple. Juho Pipparainen, and he's one. I watched him play in Liga, and just a really, for a right shot D-man that's not really out there. He was a guy that I was hoping somehow fell down to 60, but he's always mentioned, I want to play like Miro Heiskanen, and mirrors his game a lot. And I think he's going to be a guy that's going to have a short development pathway because, there's a need to put him out there for right shot D, and he's going to progress really fast. And like a lot of Finns and Swedes that play in adult leagues when they're in their teens, they just seem to have a lot more composure about them when they go out there and have to play in some faster. So I think at 29, he was a steal, especially as a right-hand D. Oscar Hemming's another one, brother to Emil Hemming for the Stars. I was hoping he fell somewhere, but I think he was drafted even a little bit above, but I think that was a good move because he's a guy that's not had a lot of recency to him because he just had a whole mess with, fighting with some of the IIHF's trade clauses. So he didn't have a lot of proof behind him, so you kind of had to bet. But, if you compare him to his brother, I think he's the better brother out of the two, and he's another guy that's just going to be, right off the bat, progress really fast and slot in. So both those guys went in the first round, but I think, picking them up early and they're going to slot into your system and potentially be a guy that you sell their jerseys of in the next couple of years, they're good picks. I think they were solid.
And the Golden Knights getting Pipparainen, and they did some trades with some of their picks too, which this is a team that has no prospect pool in my mind, and they have a really good one. They always trade these guys away, so we'll see. We'll see if Pipparainen is a guy that ends up playing for the Golden Knights, but it's always a joke. Well,
you never know with Vegas. You never know with those guys what they're going to do.
They're never afraid to trade their prospects and their first round picks. So we'll see. Dayton, what about you for steals from the first round?
There's a few that I really like. I'll pick out 2, and that is Jack Hextall and Gleb Pugachev. Those were two guys that I thought were, home run first round picks, at least at the latter half of it, which wasn't a common thought. They were generally sort of second round guys. And then as it gets closer, I think it's Mark Scheig was telling us that, be aware of these guys. They might be in the first round. And I'm like, I put them there. Should have looked at my ranking. And maybe they did. Who knows? But Flames grabbing Jack Hextall at 30. I think that's a huge value pick. He can do kind of a little bit of everything. He's speedy. He can be a playmaker. He's got a good shot. Very competitive. Plays a physical game. I think he's got really, really high upside. And then Pugachev is he's chaotic on the ice, very much a boom or bust. But I'm happy to bet on the boom. It's he's physical. He's got really good decision making. I thought he made really, really quick decisions with the puck and where to put himself. I think there's a good path for him. Just high value, especially in the later round of the first.
For sure. So we're looking at, all those guys were later picks in the first round, and maybe they could have ended up being higher, and first round picks that end up being pretty impactful players too. So we'll see. All right, Andrew, moving to the second round. This is where we start looking at more steals, and that should maybe have been in the first round. Right? Who did you see here?
I think the classic one is Marcus Ruck. He went to Pittsburgh, but some people wanted to have the Disney Channel twin siblings put together, which is nice. I'm for it, but I think he's a steal that they kind of honorably let him split. Let the Penguins have that pick. You could have gone either one, him or his twin, on who they picked, but it was, I think, being able to pull it off. What maybe there was a backroom call of hey, look, I'll give you some favors if you let us draft the twins. I think they play better together. Yeah. So that was a really good steal. I guess my unconventional one is I was a big Matthias Vanahanen, I believe. New Jersey picked him up at 37. He's an overager in this draft, but I've kind of looked into overagers this past season of their value, and I think he was the one that I would have seen late first round pick as just a really solid guy. He has a really high ceiling that was kind of overlooked. He wasn't quite ready, but he had a lot of proof this season that I was like, man, if any overager goes in the first round, it was going to be him. So being able to have him trickle down a little lower and pick him up there was just a great steal. And you're going to get a lot more, definitely a different kind of player when they've missed a draft class and kind of had to buckle down and go back to their juniors and prepare. I think he's a good steal from the second round, especially at 37. That was a good pick.
Yeah, the overagers are interesting because I feel there's some guys that just the circumstances, right? Some things too, or guys just bloom later on. You see guys that are, end up being 25-year-olds and they get signed and not even drafted. They're signed after, and you're like, why weren't they good back then? Well, it took them a bit of time. So that's where beyond the draft, these guys, they're good to follow, and you might end up with a star and not even drafting them. So
they talk about that in some of the European systems is, with Finland prospect development and these young kids is, how does Finland produce so many consistent players, this far in compared to USA and Canada with such a small population. And one of the things they talked about with their coaches is they just don't let some guys they don't filter them off, in the USA and, in Texas, the prospect, if you're not very good at hockey and you live in Texas where it's hot, or you're going to go play basketball. Hockey's an expensive sport here in USA and Canada. And in Finland, it's a little more accessible. It's still pricey, but the ability that, this is the sport you're going to play. You see some of these kids bloom a little bit later and, holding on to them. And, that's an easy thing just to say. That's a whole systematic change if you want to bring it up. But you're right. Some of these guys do bloom later and they've got a lot of potential. You kind of got to stick with them. And that's hard as a scout because you see them miss that first draft and your first thought is, well, they weren't ready. Let's just write them off. And it kind of brings up, I heard a lot of overager talk, this season. It was good because I think you're right. There's a lot of guys that are out there that are beneficial.
For sure. Dayton, what about you for steals from the second round?
Another good group of guys. Mathis Preston, I think, is the obligatory pick. It's Mark's steal of the draft, right?
Yeah.
But I had him in my first round. I thought he was, worthy of that consideration. There were inconsistencies in his game, but when he was on, to me, he looked like Berkeley Captain. He has that sort of game-breaking skill, maybe to a lower degree, but still can be very good when he is playing at his best. And he just needed to show that a little bit more consistently this year. For some reason, that pushed him all the way down to 50. So good on the Ducks for grabbing him. That's a great ad. I'm a big fan of Seamus Ignatavicius. I think he's a good all-around player. Not a flashy guy, but he'll get it done. Played really well in the top league in Switzerland. I don't know. I think that could be some pretty good value at 40 overall.
Yeah, I mean, Mathis Preston, a lot of Canucks fans wanted the Canucks to pick him at 33, and then they went with Rogowski, and they're like, Preston maybe a higher ceiling, but he doesn't have the size. And that seems like the Canucks were really focused on that this year, and I think that was the biggest reason why he wasn't picked. But we'll see. It's always going to be, in Canucks land, and everywhere. I always look at drafts later on. They're like, I should have picked this guy. I should have picked that guy. Biggest one right now is Stankoven, because Klimovich just was not qualified, and he was the guy that they picked, and Stankoven went a little later. So that's always going to be something that's going to be brought up many years from now. All right, moving to, and this is where we really get to the potential steals, because not many guys come out of this range as NHLers. Probability is very low. But when they do, these are big picks. So, Andrew, anyone that really stands out from the rest of the rounds here that could end up being someone that you're like looking down the road, you're like, whoa, I should have picked him earlier.
The two that were kind of funny, I'd said early on to our kind of Dallas Stars group check is Samu Alari is the guy that if he drops down to the Stars range, we want to draft him. He's a right-hand D, he's a Finn, fits really well into the Stars system. He was just a good guy. And so when we got down to the 59th pick, I was like, here it is. And I wasn't even checking Jakub Vanek. And one of my closer friends that follows the WHL is like, oh no, Jakub's a great pick at this. So it's kind of a dual steal. I think Chicago picking up Samu Alari at 66 was great. I was tracking him at like high 50s, low 40s. So picking him up at 66 is just a great deal. And then I was seeing Jakub going, low 40s, early 40s, low 30s. And so seeing him at 59 was a great one. Some more Finnish, backdoor picks. Lucian Bernat, he's a Slovakian that plays for Tappara and Tampere. What he's done in the U20 league, he hasn't quite gotten up to the Liga standards, but not every young guy needs to just jump into the adult leagues. They're not ready. For what he's profiled right now at 176 for Vancouver, he's going to be great. Tappara has a really good growth system there in Tampere, and all they I think like 3 of the top round picks in the first 2 rounds were Tappara guys. And so he's also been a part of that system, played with some of those other guys, and I think he's going to be a good pick. And at 176, it seems way down there, but I think he was going to go at any point, but 176 is good for him.
I love that pick for the Canucks. When I looked at him, I'm like, another guy I didn't think was still going to be available that late. And the Canucks ended up with him, and another guy with size. Of course, he's a big guy too. So I'm surprised. I was surprised, and I'm really interested to watch what he can do later on too.
And we were talking about Stankoven comps. Lars Steiner, he was another one. He went 171 to St. Louis. Small guy. I think Elite Prospects had him in top 100, and they were pretty sure. I was talking to some of the guys over there, and they're saying no, he's solid for top 100. the fact he dropped down to 171 for we talk about St. Louis had the worst draft, and I'm like, oh, they had this great steal. One of their draft picks there, I mean, he was solid. He tracks like a Logan Stankoven guy, a Cam Smith guy that's just a little undersized, but so fast and so dynamic. I think he's going to be really good too.
For sure. Dayton, what about you for rounds 3 to 7? Lots of picks, but anyone that stands out that could potentially be a surprising guy later on here?
A lot of the guys I was watching ended up going in this range, so I have a lot of favorites. Thomas Vandenberg at 103. I thought that was a great pick. He was, to me, like fringe first round. I thought his talent was fantastic. LA Kings, they have a excellent prospect there, but he's a little undersized, so he dropped. What is he listed at here? 6 foot, like barely undersized. Whatever. Axel Ellefson, I really like him. Yeah. I wrote his prospect profile. He went at 128. Colorado picked him up, again, an undersized defenseman, but I thought his skating and his awareness are right up there. Adam Valentini at 96. This was a guy I was very high on. I thought he was definitely worth a first round pick, but also significantly undersized. And that allowed the Mammoth to grab him. Mammoth had a pretty solid draft class without a lot of picks. And then 2 real off the board guys here. Parker Trottier, sort of a late riser, I guess you could say. He ended up going 189th to the Montreal Canadiens. No one was talking about him before that, which is why I call him a late riser for almost a 200 pick. The U.S. junior team, like the U.S. NTDP, didn't have a lot of big stars on it this year, I would say, aside from like the guys who went in the first round. So I think the fact that he sort of jumped out as a potential, he looked really good when I was watching him. I don't know. He's a fun one. And he's going to the WHL next year, Regina Pats.
There you go.
Okay.
Almost the same team that his grandfather played for.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Yeah. Grandfather played for the Swift Current Broncos just a couple hours away.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then my final guy, he is in Quebec, and that's Alexandre Taillefer. He played 28 games this season, but 17 points, and the Jets picked him up at 135th. A little bit of an undersized defenseman as well, but I thought he had such a well-rounded game. I thought about putting him in my top 96, but he was just like right on the edge there, and I had to make cuts, and it was late. How things go.
Yeah, lots of guys that could end up being NHL players that maybe weren't expect. I mean, like I said, the late round picks are the ones where you're like, they're shot in the dark maybe, but these are important picks as well. I mean, how many guys are in the NHL right now that aren't first round picks that end up being really good? I mean, it's a league that's not all full of first round picks, so the draft is an important one in this range as well. So we'll see how many end up there. All right. Well, to finish off the show, we got to talk about the guys that weren't drafted because, like I mentioned before, some of these stars aren't drafted, right? They're signed later on. They come out of the draft, and that's why these guys you tell them doesn't matter if you're not drafted. You keep working hard. You keep honing everything. You could end up being in the NHL anyway, so you got to keep working on it. Andrew, do you see anyone that you're really surprised weren't picked this year?
Yeah, so get ready for a lot of Finns. That's definitely where I do a lot of my amateur scouting is in the Finnish market. And one that I was actually pretty shocked about this is Olli Walrus, which my wife, who speaks Finnish downstairs, is going to be kicking herself hearing me pronounce some of these last names, but I do my best. He's a WHL guy, Dayton, that she can track. He's going to Edmonton Oil Kings. But honestly, the Central Scouting, they had him 107 in the EU. But just when I was watching him this year for Ilves, which is another Tampere team like Tampere, he was great. Just his shooting was very dialed in, was picking his shots. Always felt like he had plenty of time when he was taking the shot. And part of that might have been that, when you play in the younger leagues and you're a younger guy, you feel like you have more space. And some of the scouts might have felt that he wasn't quite ready. But I think he's going to be a guy next season that's going to be an overager there. I just was shocked that nobody took kind of a risk on him. My next one is another guy from the Ilves market, Jakub Frollo. He played with them, and he's a big guy. And we talk about these Alexander Karmenov. They took a stroke on him because he's a really big guy. Jakub Frollo is another dude that's a pretty decently large guy. Very aggressive for Finnish league. You don't see a lot of guys trying to get into fights and Finnish juniors, but he was a guy that was had a lot of breakups by the refs. And I was surprised he didn't go, but which bigger guys that have less skill, you wonder how they're going to enter the overager market. So we'll see. And I would be curious to hear some of the scouts' reasoning. Maybe this was a stacked draft class and there was not a lot of picks. My last one is one that he's a Russian guy, Vasvald Mataviev, which once again, excuse me. But he was, over 6 foot right shot defenseman that had really good skating. When I was watching some of his profiles this season, you see some players that are big and you expect them to be a little clumsier, especially if they're a little more physical. But this was a guy who had a lot of mobility in the MHL, which is the Russian Junior League, and was pretty skilled. I was surprised that folks didn't take a shot at him. But it's one of those things that maybe his toolkit wasn't there. There were just being big and not really having a shot and passing skills, not a lot to take a risk on. So was a little surprised by those 3 guys. I had them for sure going somewhere and taking a risk, but Ole was definitely my biggest one that I was surprised on him. I had him as one of the top 10 Finns in this draft, which I'm not sure if 10 Finns went in this draft. I think there was, but I had him as number 8 out of, somebody mid, 3rd round pick to at least pick a pick on.
Yeah. I mean, of course there's only so many picks in the draft, but it ends up being a little bit surprising that some of these guys don't go, and they're gonna have another chance next year, and could end up. I mean, some of these guys don't go undrafted, and all of a sudden they're drafted in the 3rd round. So, Chernisov is probably the biggest one there that was an undrafted overager and ends up going in the 1st round. So, I mean, haven't seen anything like that since then, but. We'll see if any of these guys go drafting or get drafted next year.
There's also a pile of goalie in those, like we mentioned, there's only 32 goalies that went. There's got to be a pile of untapped goalies that you're going to hear just coming back around, and they're a sleeper pick that's going to come through. But the goalie market's hard to tell for me.
Yeah, definitely, because it's just such a long-term, development path. I mean, a lot of these guys you're not going to see maybe in the AHL, in like 4 years, right? So, lots of development there. Dayton, anyone that you saw that was very surprising to you that wasn't called?
Yeah, we saw that big run on goalies. 32 being drafted. Why was the 3rd ranked North American goalie left undrafted? Jan Laris was not picked. He's a 6'3" goalie with the Drummondville Voltigeurs. He had pretty decent stats, maybe not a great playoff run, but I think they were up against a pretty tough team. I can't remember off the top of my head anymore. But he looked good. I'm not sure why he wasn't picked. Same thing with Harrison Bottiger, or Bottiger.
Yeah.
Another goalie, this one out of Kelowna, not picked. William Lassell, also not picked. Also playing in the Quebec League. I thought he had much better stats. 6'1" is maybe a little bit undersized for goalies now, but he's quick, he's smart. I do wonder if teams were scared off by the fact that he's deaf in one of his ears. It hasn't affected him, but I don't know. Teams get weird. There were some weird choices this draft. And I think maybe the weirdest for me was Landon Amrine, player out of Calgary with the Calgary Hitmen. So he's an American, came up this year, had a decent season, was paying about 30 points in 60 games. 6'4", skates pretty decent, not drafted.
Yeah.
Like that's the definition of a guy that gets picked.
Yeah. Interesting.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
Those were the ones that like really confused me. There were some other guys that I thought, I'd love to see them picked. I get why they're not. They were quite small. They had some, big growth to do both in their game and just their size. So
I thought Carter Casey was another one too. Plays with Medicine Hat. He was the guy that also didn't get drafted, and he's kind of stereotypical solid goalie. Had a decent season with the Medicine Hat Tigers, and just didn't get picked.
Yeah, I mean, we could have ended up seeing more goalies if they were all picked. It's going to be, I mean, a lot of these guys, of course, will have the chance, and not all of them will have a chance to be drafted next year. So we'll just have to track them, and they could end up going higher and going somewhere next year. So we'll have to watch that. Interesting draft, lots of action, not just on the draft floor and picks, but lots of trades that happened, lots of major ones that, after a quiet, I'd say relatively quiet last year's draft regarding trades, there was quite a few this year, not just small players moving, lots of big names. So we'll see if that, next year comes up with the hype, because Landon Dupont is the guy that is projected to be the first overall pick, a WHL player that had the exceptional status as well. So, and had a great season this year. So we'll have to watch. And of course that will be, and scouting's already started for the 2027 draft. It started, it of course starts way earlier. This cycle is going to repeat itself pretty soon. So thanks, Dayton. Thanks, Andrew, for coming on. As always, talking prospects. Andrew, we'll have to have you on again, because that's great. It's going to be another fun, and this is effectively our season finale for this season. We always wrap the draft up, and that wraps the season up, and we'll have our season premiere soon. But make sure to check out everything at thehockeywriters.com. We got all of our draft recaps. I think a lot of the writing teams already put those together. So check out all that, and there's going to be lots of prospect stuff throughout the off season as well. Some of these guys may be in the NHL. Gavin McKenna already signed his ELC. So he'll most likely be he will be, because he's not going back to the NCAA. So he'll be in Toronto. So we'll be able to watch him. Who knows? We might see a few other guys in the NHL. Who knows? But lots of guys seem to be going to the NCAA. So we might not see a lot, but McKenna for sure. But check out all that. And until our next episode, we will see you next time.